Hello everyone and welcome to the Stupid Show. On tonight's show, I say something stupid and my host, Philosopher King, says something stupid.
As ever, this is why it's the Stupid Show.
Exactly, and there we go. I've managed to repeat the exact same intro pretty much word for word from last week.
Very good. We're developing a chemistry and a routine.
Yes, certainly. I mean, but also at the same time, I'm running out of ideas to come up with a good intro, so I thought let's just repeat the same one because that worked last time, and I think hopefully people will have noticed.
Yes.
I don't know, but now I actually got that. That's kind of an immediate parody of the Top Gear intro, how they do that.
Yeah. Tonight, I run into a ditch.
What sort of ditch?
A dry ditch.
What's a dry ditch?
One in which May says, "Oh cock."
Oh, is it? Oh, right. So what, like a vagina then?
You got it. Anyway,
exactly.
Enough faffing about.
So for this week's show, Philosopher King has got a big amount of content to do, and basically that's going to take up quite a lot of time. Therefore, I had practically nothing to do. But fortunately, I found a short little intro that means that I can now say I've done something for this episode. So, a few years ago, I used to be quite good at poetry, and I wrote some weird stuff. And this is one of my poems from my anthology of moronity, I think is what I call it. It's entitled "The Tree is Beautiful." Sometimes, when the world is black, no light comes through crack, stuck in a sack, but you never look back because the tree is beautiful. Always, when your flower is dead, you make nothing but bread. Like grandmother said, but it's only bread because the tree is beautiful. Never, after drinking at the bar, should you immediately drive a car. Not even because it's not far. Because you will end up far, ting, as you crash into that faggoty tree. But that's okay, because the faggoty tree you hit is still beautiful. Always, you will probably die, because you told a dry cleaner that you tied a rope around their necktie. But where you lay is filled with hay and shit, so it doesn't matter because the tree is beautiful. Now, under the yew, now lies you. From death you tried to flew, but you failed. But you know that it doesn't matter because I owned Hillary's pussy last night. It was fucking worth it, I can tell you. So, what do you think?
That was funny. I was actually holding back laughter at certain points.
Well, okay, and that's now my contribution over for this episode. So,
segue, when you mentioned Hillary's pussy, that reminded me of a news item that I saw last night in which Madonna offered oral sex to any man who would vote for Hillary Clinton. She said this at an Amy Schumer a comedy gig, I guess.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, can you imagine a campaign being so desperate for males over 35 to vote for that campaign that they would send a 50-plus-year-old has-been to prostitute herself for some votes? It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think there are some good-looking women over 40, but the fact is that when you're over 40, you know, you're not very good at producing children, even though you can still technically produce children. I'm not going to risk, you know, the resulting child just being some horrible thing. I think, you know, I don't want to go that far. As much as I'd like to, I don't want to. But certainly, I don't think it's worth a vote for a vote for Hillary Clinton is not worth Madonna's pussy. It's just.
Well, it would actually be her mouth.
Oh yeah, because. Yeah, that makes. Oh yeah, yeah. Of course,
the thing about that I find so funny is that something similar was tried during the primaries when there are these young women on Instagram and all the other image-based social media that were saying that they'd send nudes to anyone who voted against Trump. And the thing is that there's for both that and the situation with Madonna, there's no verification process. They have no way of knowing who you voted for. We have secret ballots in this country, so you could tick yes for Trump with knobs on, go get your meat sucked, and then say, "Ha! I voted for Trump, bitch," and walk out.
Yeah, yes, I suppose exactly. But fucking old women, eh?
Yeah.
They think they can control us. But no, and yeah, it's just.
But anyway, shall we get on to the
Yes,
emails?
certainly, we've got a lot to cover through. I think.
Right.
Well, yeah, we do because there's like thousands of them. But anyway.
Right, and precisely because there's thousands, I won't be reading through them one by one, but I'll give a synopsis of different categories of things that were uncovered in these emails. Of the categories, you have so far quid pro quo and pay to play schemes, in which money changed hands for influence. And you have numerous, almost uncountable examples of media collusion with the Democratic National Committee and Clinton's campaign. And you have numerous examples of communication, illicit communication between the various departments within the executive branch and Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee regarding the email scandal itself, pertaining to the FBI investigation and the House Oversight Committee's investigation into how the FBI handled their decision. So I suppose first we'll talk about a few of the examples of quid pro quo and pay to play. There are at least four examples of national governments paying the Clinton Foundation directly, or even will Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton directly for favors. Morocco paid $12 million, I believe it was, to host a Clinton Global Initiative conference, and I think it was Saudi Arabia paid millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. For what exactly, I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at it. Qatar paid Bill Clinton $1 million for his birthday, and they were hoping to get some inside track on investing in Haiti, which of course the Clintons, through their foundation, have been economically raping, and I don't use that term lightly, ever since their slew of earthquakes and hurricanes, as sort of a means to exploit Haiti's dire situation for financial gain and for political influence. And Algeria was also in that list of countries that paid the Clinton Foundation to come off of a terror watch list. So there's quite a lot of money changing hands for very criminal enterprises, including terrorism and illegal trade and investment opportunities. Is there anything you want to add to that, or any thoughts you had?
No. I mean, I think it's pretty all much self-explanatory. Obviously, the Clintons used the Clinton Foundation as a means of garnering support through many different individuals who the US probably doesn't really want messing around in their politics. So I think that's kind of one of the biggest problems of effectively if Clinton gets elected, people of non-US citizens are also effectively getting elected because they're pulling the strings and sort of deciding what happens, when obviously it shouldn't really be like that. It should be where the citizens elect a president who they believe will run the country for their interests. and this is one
Right.
of the key, division areas between Trump and Clinton. That Trump will, will essentially put his life on the line, not literally, but for the public, and obviously Clinton is, well, it essentially has so many foreign interests that she's basically going to listen to them and not the public, I think.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because that ties in 2 points that I wanted to make that sort of underlie all of these issues that come up through the emails. Clinton, in the emails, there are drafts of her speeches to Wall Street firms. And in it, she says some things that make her claims during the debates to have the best interests of the United States counter to Donald Trump very duplicitous and very clearly false. In one of her statements to a Wall Street firm, she was saying that she has a public and a private position on issues. The public position, ostensibly, is to dupe voters into supporting her, believing that she will be tackling issues in the way that she knows citizens want them to be tackled. So, in that idea of a public position, essentially she's just echoing what people want to hear and using their confirmation bias to trick them into voting for her, believing that it's a vote for their own interests. Whereas the private position, and as other things she's mentioned in these speeches sort of elucidate, her private position is whatever gets her ahead on the sort of inside baseball of politics, whether it be money laundering and corruption through the Clinton Foundation, or her connections with George Soros and his shady dealings, or covering for Bill Clinton and abusing his accusers when it comes to allegations of sexual impropriety, or any number of those things. Economic issues, for instance, she's publicly stated that she's against TPP and TPIP.
What's
but
CPIP and
in
TPP?
her Wall Street, those are international trade agreements that basically.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the listeners who probably know what it is, but just a brief sort of synopsis, it's basically a trade deal that's in the vein of NAFTA, but more global. So when we talk about globalism and sort of the globalist elite, this is the sort of trade agreement that they would salivate over because it gives them all of the sort of easy access to other markets that they could want. So all of these things are mentioned in the emails, and Clinton has been duplicitous on every single one in that she says what she knows the public wants to hear in debates and in campaign speeches, but when she's talking to the people who actually give her money, Wall Street firms such as Goldman Sachs, or when she's coordinating with her staffers, her true objectives are made clear, and they're the complete opposite of what she purports to be in favor of to the voting public. So coming back now to the change of the money changing hands, a lot of the deals that she makes are with entities that are foreign entities, whether it be foreign governments or wealthy multinational corporations or so on. She's illegally taking money from them to do their bidding through our political process. And she has the mendacity and the hypocrisy to tell Trump that he is the one who is interfering, allowing foreign governments like Russia to interfere in our political process, when in fact there is no proof that Russia had any involvement in WikiLeaks. or that Trump has any involvement with Putin, but rather there is proof through WikiLeaks that Clinton has direct financial and political involvement in an illegal manner with foreign governments, including Russia, which is quite the irony through the Uranium One scandal, which we might cover a bit later on. So before I move on to some of the other subtopics, did you want to jump in here?
I would like to say that if it were not for the WikiLeaks hacking or not hacking, but the revealing of the emails, then we would not be able to make this podcast. So thank you very much, WikiLeaks.
Yeah, brilliant job, Julian Assange. I have to applaud him for his bravery. So to sort of, as we've just mentioned, Julian Assange, one of the dramas that has come up in the past week was Julian Assange's security, and would he be able to continue releasing the leaks even if he were to be assassinated or captured or whatever the case might be. And as many people who are probably listening would know, he has an outstanding warrant for his arrest and charges pending for sexual assault based on a claim against him in Sweden. Now, Dr. Randall McCam is one of my favorite YouTubers, and he briefly mentioned this in one of his videos, where he was basically saying that when Assange was revealing dirt on the political right, he was a hero to the left. But as soon as it's their side, one pinko dickhead comes out and says, oh, there was this one time he didn't wear a condom, so he raped me. And all of a sudden there's now charges pending. So it's very clearly political duplicity and gamesmanship trying to prevent him from outing the dirt on the left, which he has been successfully doing. In fact, I think this is his most successful operation to date in the 10 years he's been operating. But the problem is that because of his outstanding warrant with Sweden and Sweden's extradition treaties with many other countries, and the United States' interest in him because of his releasing of their secret documents, he has had to be holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London because Ecuador doesn't have extradition treaties with these other countries. So he hasn't been able to leave in all this time. And so it came out, I believe it was Tuesday, that his internet access at the Ecuadorian embassy was cut. And speculation has turned up the theory that Secretary of State John Kerry of the United States pressured Ecuador into severing Assange's internet connection in an attempt to silence him, because there's information about John Kerry's involvement in these scandals that has yet to come out. And this speculation came up as a result of code hashes being tweeted out by the WikiLeaks Twitter account with clear subject matter headings pertaining to the Ecuadorian embassy in London and to John Kerry. So my speculation on this is that it's to do with Assange getting access keys out to his cohorts, to his colleagues at other locations, should his internet connection be severed or should he be killed. And it's probably on a bot via his Twitter account as a dead man switch. So should something happen to his internet connection, his Twitter account or the WikiLeaks Twitter account would automatically transfer access of the leaked documents to other parties in various locations. And they would have access to the information via torrent, which would mean that it wouldn't be in a central location that could be attacked by cyber forces of various governments and third-party hackers, etc. So that's been one drama that's been sort of unfolding, because we haven't had very clear confirmation of Assange's status as far as his involvement in the continued leaks since that point. or if he is alive and healthy. There have been some images that have come out of him claiming that they were current images showing him to be healthy and safe. But again, with issues like this where government assassins could potentially be involved, I'd rather take things with a grain of salt. Pausing for a moment, anything to add here?
Well, not particularly, other than that. Obviously, since being in London, obviously that if he were to be killed, I think it would be a rather bad, rather terrible disaster, and that I'd be amazed to know how long it would take before people found out about it. Probably not long in the advent of the internet, but at the same time, you have to worry for his life. I wasn't really thinking about the fact that he might even be dead, and as far as my thoughts are concerned, that for me is a conspiracy until it's actually confirmed whether he's okay or not. But certainly, if he were to be killed, that would certainly be a gross, violation of US government power and sort of further confirmation of how corrupt the Democratic Party is, and
Right, and that sort of connects nicely into some of the other subjects that came up in the leaked emails. One of the leaks from last week had a very strange email in particular that mentioned the term wet works. And for those who are unfamiliar, wet works is a euphemism common in the U.S. military for assassination, particularly of highly politically influential targets. And this email was sent between two parties in Hillary Clinton's high-ranking staff. John Podesta is the one whose emails have been hacked most recently and have been being released over the last couple weeks. It was between himself and another party whose name I don't remember. But it was this email came out a few days before Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia died, and it mentioned certain features of the place that fit where Scalia was when he died. So again, this is just theoretical. It's just speculation, but it's interesting that the term wet works came up very explicitly, which lends itself very well to the theory that an assassination on Justice Scalia was afoot. It mentioned a vineyard and a pool, and there was a vineyard nearby, adjacent to the property where Justice Scalia was found dead, and there was also a pool at that property. And according to various reports, his body was found with a pillow over his face. But again, interesting circumstances into the aftermath of Scalia's death. He was cremated against his religious beliefs, and there was no autopsy, and there was no information released about his death other than the very generic claim that it was natural causes. So, all in all, I find it very suspicious, and I'm not one to be a conspiracy theorist, but there's too many unanswered questions that make me distrusting of anyone who would say that everything there is normal as far as deaths by natural cause are concerned.
Yeah, it's all very mysterious, and of course it's as for all we know, it could be a conspiracy. We don't really know, but again, it's very suspicious indeed.
Yeah, lots of cloak and dagger stuff going on.
Certainly.
And again, rounding back to our main thread of the emails and other things that have been uncovered as far as major categories, we mentioned media collusion. That's been one of the biggest stories to come out of this leak. The absurd amount of collusion between the mainstream media and the Clinton campaign and the various branches of the various facets of the executive branch of the American government and the Democratic National Committee. Dealing first with the media, CNN is, I mean, what a piece of work.
Yeah.
Where do I even begin? There's many examples of their reporters, if you can call them that. They're certainly not journalists.
No.
Emailing back and forth with Podesta and other high-ranking staffers in Clinton's camp and with the DNC to sort of work out a narrative and how to spin certain stories and how to slander Bernie Sanders or make him appear the worse on stories and softball Clinton on questions during interviews and debates and so on. Two of the most notable examples of this are Donna Brazile, who was simultaneously a deputy chair at the DNC under Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And when Wasserman Schultz resigned over the Guccifer leaks, Donna Brazile took her place. During this time of Donna Brazile's tenure at the DNC, she was also a consultant and pundit for CNN. And she was getting questions ahead of time from CNN and passing them on to Clinton's campaign so that they could prep her for those questions during debates, which would mean that she had a bit of an inside track, Clinton did, during these debates and interviews, and she could deploy her rehearsed and focus grouped answers to these questions. Brazile was very embarrassing last night when confronted by the media over, by alternative media over these revelations, because the mainstream media has been dropping the ball prodigiously on this aspect of the email scandal, and in fact many of the other aspects, because a lot of these media outlets have been implicated. Furthermore, CNN's, I believe his name is Chris Cuomo, had a clip that went viral because it was the most pathetic attempt at deflection away from CNN's complicity in the media collusion, wherein he is telling viewers that it is illegal for them to possess the leaked emails, and that it's different for the media, and so the only way you can know about stuff going on in the emails is from media like CNN. And I found that absolutely laughable at how pathetic that is.
Certainly.
Anyone who believes that, I mean, you don't deserve a vote.
Yeah. And obviously, Sargon Avocad has his gaming and his shitposting channel, on which he's been posting a lot of the CNN stuff and then recaptioning the headlines. That's how I managed to see that. And I typed on the comment of that video, which he posted, bullshit, mate. Yeah, it's just incredible how you can try and convince.
Funny coincidence, I actually saw your comment on that video by chance.
I know. It's amazing. I've been seeing plenty of the people that I've been talking to in YouTube comments. It's incredible. Although, to be quite honest, it's not really unreasonable, since we're all sort of interested in the same stuff. We're not in a hive mind or a bubble or anything like that. It's just that we happen to have the same interests and we watch the same people, I guess.
Right. And on that sort of aside, I think the whole reason why a lot of us have found community over these topics is because we all value discussion and honest debate and open-mindedness, such that if you are proven wrong by someone with rational skills, you have the ability to change your mind rather than emotionally recoil into an echo chamber. So to people who are unfamiliar with the community, it might seem like an echo chamber because we share those values, but there are a lot of things in terms of details that we disagree on, that there is very vigorous debate on, and we're not afraid to engage in that debate. Whereas the other side of the ideological divide, as far as free speech and debate is concerned, is very concerned with maintaining their circle of beliefs and of ideology, shared ideology, so that they are not confronted with emotionally disquieting arguments, and which is why you see the phenomenon of triggering when they get really emotionally bent out of shape because someone has dared to disagree with them and cause them cognitive dissonance for their worldview. But yeah, a lot of us share an interest in people who challenge the zeitgeist, the mainstream narrative on certain social issues and even economic issues. And that's why we've sort of found community in the pursuit of new knowledge.
I wanted to go back to CNN again, and we've discussed this before during our Skype conversations when we haven't been recording. But my parents have just come back from a trip to America. They went first to New York and then flew over Philosophy King's Head to get to Washington DC. Almost literally, because he lives in Philadelphia. Although it wasn't probable, it was probably didn't actually have them flying over the head, because the chances of that would be just insane. But it's probable. I don't know if it's actually happened, but not anyway. Point is, of course, they watched the second presidential debate while they were over there, and my mum, I've got to be honest, we are able to talk to each other, and we both believe in the idea that we should be discussing things, and she's not a complete social justice warrior. She's not a complete social justice warrior. However, she's said to me today that while I may think, I personally think that CNN and the BBC are biased, she says, well, I don't believe you. But then she also said that CNN are the best media outlet in the US because they make sense. I've got to be honest, all media channels have to make sense, otherwise no one's going to understand them. If they just start talking gibberish, then they've completely defeated the point of having a media outlet. And certainly I don't agree with that argument on the basis that you have to as a media broadcaster, as a news broadcaster, you have to do more than just simply make sense. You have to be factual. Unfortunately, there's nothing really in the mainstream media that is factual, and it's a great shame, because then you have to go to the alternative media, which is great, as we've discussed. It's all about debunking ideas and sort of finding the real truth, but nobody's ever heard of the alternative media, so it's got its downside of that. And so it's
on the positive side, though, I do think it's a generational shift that's taking place. Our parents' generation was much more interested in TV news and newspaper news and magazines like Time magazine and that sort of thing, whereas our generation is much more into the alternative media, and as a result, the financial power of the establishment media is on the decline. So, for example, newspapers aren't selling like they used to, so they've been having to transition to the online format. But the danger there is that they become glorified blogs, and it's a bit more difficult to hold them accountable in terms of financial support, because it's by clicks, it's by views per click. So if they have clickbaity headlines, or if they say the politically correct thing, they'll drive a lot of traffic. and more traffic means more ad revenue. But the flip side to that is that it's more democratic. It's a lot easier to become part of the media by means of alternative media driven by the internet. So, as we mentioned, Sargon of Akkad, or Dave Rubin, or Steven Crowder, or Lauren Southern, or any of those types of personalities that I would consider alternative media are now also on the come up and exposing the truth. And as we'll bring up later, Project Veritas, I think, has been a very interesting part of the alternative media in the last handful of days with what they've revealed. But we'll come back to that in a minute. Finishing up with the emails and the collusion that has been exposed within these emails. Another aspect of it, besides for the media and the multitude of outlets, not just CNN, that has been implicated, you also have, as I've alluded to before, the various branches or various aspects of the executive branch of the U.S. government. So President Obama is the head of the executive branch. He's the chief executive. But among the executive branch, you also have the Department of Justice, which is involved in investigations, which includes the FBI, and you have the Department of State, which of course is headed by the Secretary of State, currently John Kerry, and previously before him, Hillary Clinton. Both of these departments were in communication with John Podesta and Cheryl Mills, and Heather Samuelson, I think her name is. Or is it Heather Mills and Cheryl Samuelson? I always get their names confused. But they were in communication with one another, working on strategy to deceive not only the American public, but also the FBI investigation, and potentially manipulate Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, who is the head of the Department of Justice. And all of this was during the Benghazi situation investigation, which snowballed into the private server issue, which then snowballed into all of these other things that we're seeing the permutations of now. But because of the collusion between the Department of State and Department of Justice and some of the content of those emails, not only do we have very good reason to believe, and I would argue proof, that the incident in which Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch was possibly regarding the decision whether or not to indict and interfere with the FBI investigation. I think there's also good reason to believe that President Obama did know, contrary to his public statements, that Secretary Clinton had an illegal server, a private server, with which she conducted state business, which by law she's not allowed to do on a private server, including the emailing back and forth of classified information, and as we've alluded to before, the quid pro quo arrangements between state and private actors. In fact, there are emails between Podesta and other staff members explicitly stating that it would look bad for President Obama, given his statement, his public statement, if certain emails were to come out or if certain statements were to be made by other personnel. So it's becoming more and more clear as more information comes out that President Obama is complicit in this just as much as anyone else. And in fact, even when he first made his statement that he found out with the rest of us about Clinton's private server, I found it hard to believe, because if you are the chief executive and your cabinet, including the Secretary of State, is conducting illegal business on an illegally obtained or an illegally held private server, you are either incompetent or complicit if you don't know, or purport to not know. So I think that as more leaks come out, we'll start to see more and more of Obama's involvement. As for John Kerry's involvement, that's yet to be determined, to the best of my knowledge. But I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out about his role in all of this. Thoughts?
Well, on Obama, I guess in 2008, I kind of didn't really know that much about politics or American politics. I knew who the Prime Minister was, and I was, more than happy to keep track of who the President was. I think the memory of George W. Bush being the President was something that I was keeping in my mind. That was something that I was constantly worried about, even though at the end of the day they were just personalities. They didn't really mean much more than that. But anyway, so when Obama got elected, I was listening to some of his speeches, and yes, he certainly seemed like a better president than George W. Bush at the time. It seemed as though he was a very good public speaker, someone who was very good at making people listen, and even to this day, I don't really doubt his public speaking skills, and he's someone that does sound very convincing. However, during his tenure as president, I've always felt that towards the end of his tenure of being president, as I should say, I haven't really felt that he's actually done anything. And I guess part of that is because of his inability to get things done through Congress, and that's, I presume, it's because the Democrats don't have a majority. I do believe that they're actually in the second largest party in Congress. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're correct. So the Democrats' biggest talking point in defending Obama's inability to achieve certain objectives has been to blame Congress as an obstructionist Congress. But my problem with that is, if you look at, I think the prime example is Obama's use of executive orders and how he pushed on health care. He's able to push and use executive powers, perhaps inappropriately or even illegally, but push nonetheless to get things done when he wants to over Congress's head. So I don't buy that Congress is obstructionist, especially as it's been coming out in these leaks that he is involved in the sort of neocon, if you want to call them that, or globalist, if you prefer, agenda, which is very much in line with a lot of Republican policies. So especially on economics, there's no reason why he shouldn't have been able to do more of what he said he wanted to do. I think the case is more that he said things and didn't really mean them. Very much a case of Clintonian public versus private positions, especially as more and more of his involvement in these backroom dealings comes out. I think I would wager that we'll start to see more of his actual political philosophy in action. And I doubt that it's as, quote, progressive as he would have the public believe. Because, I mean, if you look at his campaign speeches from 2008, he said exactly the same shit as Bernie Sanders was saying. But how much is really all that different from before Obama took office to present? I don't see a whole lot that's different. In fact, I see a whole lot of, because things were the same, we continued on the same downward trajectory on a lot of issues. And perhaps another time we can sort of more incisively criticize Obama's tenure as president as it pertains to social issues like men's rights and so on. But I think those are pretty big topics for another time, so we'll come back to that some other day.
I just wanted to point out. Wanted to point out that obviously in the UK how it works is that you have parliamentary constituencies, which are sectors of the UK that are determined by population, and each constituency represents one seat in the House of Commons, which is the lowest seat of the Houses of Parliament, which is where you have Theresa May and the government. So essentially it's the equivalent of Congress, I guess, where And how it works is that in every maximum 5 years, you have a general election, and you have, just as you do in the US, you have a poll, and the winner of the constituency is the person who gets the most votes. As in the US, I think it's slightly different. You get the winner of the party with the most votes gets to nominate representatives or something. But yeah, so my point is that the part.
Would you like me to break it down
sure.
really quickly, or do you want to finish
if you quickly do
with
that,
the
if you explain how it works, I guess, kind of. Yeah, and then. Yeah.
Okay, so each party is sort of a private entity, so they have a convention at which they revise their own rules. And the rules are generally that you have delegates who, upon receiving the popular vote for a candidate, pledge their vote as a delegate to that candidate until the number of delegates stacks up to a majority out of the delegates, and then that majority of delegates cast their vote for the candidate for whom their mandate from the people came at the convention, and then that candidate is then selected at the convention to go into the general election season as the representative for that party. Whereas in the general election, it's similar, but it's at the federal level as opposed to privately among parties, where you have the Electoral College, and each state has a number of electoral representatives by population. So, for example, California has quite a large population as a state, and therefore, last I remember, they have 55 electoral representatives. So the popular vote in California translates into the pledge of those electors to cast their vote for the candidate via the mandate of the people. So as we saw with Al Gore versus George Bush in 2000, it is possible for a candidate to win the popular vote by way of votes from citizens, but lose the Electoral College. Which means that even though more people in the country wanted Al Gore to be president, George Bush won the election because he captured the critical states in terms of numbers of electors in the Electoral College.
Yes, of course. But then obviously in the UK it's as simple as if the constituency, the person with the most votes, an MP, wins the constituency, they get the seat in Parliament, and therefore the party with the most seats is the winner, which means that essentially elections are decided overnight after the polling day. So you'll know the morning after everyone's cast their votes who the Prime Minister is going to be. In the US, it takes a few months. But what the point I was actually trying to make was that in the UK, if you don't have the most seats, unless you form a coalition, it's very difficult to control anything. But obviously, so therefore, it's basically, which is it's kind of why in the UK, but I think it's kind of a better system, since you need to have a majority of seats to be able to do anything. Otherwise, it gets complicated. But essentially, yeah. I think that's probably. I do think the US system does need a bit of reform to, make it a bit more fair, I guess. I mean, the UK system needs reformation too. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the first past the post system or popular vote per constituency system works, because you can have a large amount of popular vote, but then again not very many seats, and vice versa. And I think it's but it's certainly better than the US system, where essentially you're not where you don't directly vote for someone who's supposed to represent you as such, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd like to see the electoral college be eliminated. I'd much rather have a direct popular vote determine elections, because that way you know that there can't be any electoral college vote fixing shenanigans. And it would also create necessity for reforms to voter registration so that, as we'll discuss in our segment on Project Veritas, voter fraud can't be committed, at least not as easily. And it would also make it so that the president is much more directly selected by the people, and therefore there's much more legitimacy and therefore much more answerability to the people.
Shall we move on then? Yes.
Yes. So I think that's a good general overview of what's been uncovered in the email so far. I'm sure commenters will be able to point out anything we've missed, and perhaps we can come back to this subject and add on as more stuff comes out and as people point out what we may have missed. But moving on to Project Veritas, which we've mentioned a number of times, there's a sort of, he describes himself as a guerrilla journalist or a guerrilla activist, James O'Keefe, who has a media organization called Project Veritas. And what he does is he does undercover investigative journalism. So he and his colleagues pose as interested investors or co-conspirators or whatever, and get various members of organizations involved in political impropriety to expose some of their conspiracies to him with while he has a hidden recording system running, and then he releases these videos. He's released 3 videos so far, 2 somewhere to like 10 to 15 minutes, and 1 was about a minute and a half. And what they show is contractors that the DNC has hired to help commit voter fraud, to bump their numbers up in highly contested states and districts, and also in terms of psyops and political rabble rousing. They call it bird dogging, setting up Trump supporters and Trump events to make Trump supporters look like crazy, violent miscreants. So he's gotten, I forget the guy's first name, but Fovel is his last name, on camera admitting to, or rather bragging about, being responsible for organizing the instigation at the Chicago event that Trump was supposed to have that got shut down because of riots outside the venue. And there was another story of an old woman who had allegedly been knocked over and roughed up by a Trump supporter. And that story was shown to be false. What Project Veritas did regarding that story was demonstrate that she was also one of the paid instigators from some of these organizations that the DNC paid. And they've done a lot of these rapid response, they call it, to Trump events popping up all over the country. And this, in coordination with the collusion with the media, has created the narrative that Trump supporters are violent and that Trump encourages violence. And it's been basically a massive slander and libel campaign fueled by dirty money and by collusion with these dark entities that are there within shell companies. And it's so complicated how they're set up, it's hard to follow. I'd actually have to go back and read through some of the documentation or rewatch the videos. But essentially the point is Robert Kramer and I forget the other guy's first name, Fovel, and their associates and their various enterprises have been working with the DNC to try and corrupt the voting process in the DNC's favor, including paying voters to drive to different voting venues and vote multiple times, and registering deceased people as voters, and having them vote with having people vote with the deceased person's registration, or having illegal immigrants voting, and paying them for it, which is, of course, another insight into one of the aspects of the leaked emails that demonstrates that Clinton and her campaign want open borders and want to facilitate more and more illegal immigration. It's all about cultivating votes for themselves and therefore more power, and making the resistance to this this sort of cabal of co-conspirators more and more futile as they amass more and more power and more blind support.
Well, obviously, it certainly only really confirms how dirty and horrible these people really are, and I guess this really points out to me, speaks to me really as one of the reasons why, if I were a US citizen, I would never vote for Hillary Clinton, purely because of this, collusion and manipulation, and obviously there are other reasons too, which we've also discussed in this episode. But this is certainly one of those things that I just absolutely disapprove of this desire, to hunger to simply get into power and stay there. When was the last time that we had a politician that got into power that was really for in the interest of people? I mean, can you think of anyone in particular? When was the last president? I mean, even that was when was the last good president? Would you say?
I mean, it was certainly a long time. Kennedy, a lot of people are theorizing, especially with information that's come up now and some of Kennedy's quotes in his last days, are theorizing that the ideological group behind what's going on presently had a presence, perhaps not with the same people, perhaps with some of the same people back in Kennedy's day, and they might have been behind his assassination. That's one speculation that I've seen going around. So Kennedy might have been the last president that genuinely wanted to do something that wasn't in the interest of amassing power for himself and his cronies. Lincoln, I think, was another one. And of course, Lincoln, I think, is a very interesting historical parallel in terms of the cultural tensions in the country. A lot of people incorrectly assume that the Civil War was started in the United States over the slavery issue alone. That's not entirely true. Lincoln, when he started out, wasn't necessarily anti-slavery. As he started out, his issue was about preventing the South from seceding and going rogue and doing their things, and because the South was largely agrarian and the North was industrializing. So he saw his job as president to maintain the Union, which meant keeping the South in check, but at the same time not hampering the North's industrialization process. So he had to balance things. So he was elected as the great balancer. And the South was very pissed off about this. And so because they were pissed off that he got elected over their candidate, they seceded and the Civil War began, because Lincoln saw his mandate as keeping the Union together. During the Civil War, he realized that slavery was a ridiculous thing, and eventually that became his issue. So in terms of how the Civil War began, I'm seeing a lot of that paralleled in what's going on in terms of how critically important it is for American citizens and freedom, and actually having the president be answerable to citizens for Trump to be elected. If Trump loses, what's inevitably going to happen is that Clinton is going to be in power, and she's going to do more of the same stuff that she's been doing even before she became president, except now she's going to have more power to do it. And she's going to have the keys to her own corruption. So she won't be prosecuted for her past corruption, and she'll be able to control the situation through power politics in terms of her future corruption. Whereas if Trump gets elected, and both sides know this, he's going to, as the hashtag came up the other day, drain the swamp. Which means if Trump gets elected, all of the establishment, the corrupt establishment, is now in much more jeopardy than they are presently, because there's actually a chance that Trump's Department of Justice is going to put together a team to take these people down and restore the integrity of the American political system. So, in terms of the potential for civil war, I'm worried about what happens between now, during the course of Election Day, and the interim until inauguration. Will Trump be assassinated if he actually does get the vote? Will he be assassinated if the Clinton campaign panics and thinks that he might get the vote even before Election Day? Even if they're not successful, will they attempt it? And if Trump loses, and even if it's fair and square, what does that mean for the future of America and for the rest of the world? In that there's a lot of saber rattling going on between the Obama administration and Putin's administration, and their sort of chessboard of the Middle East and so on. So there's a lot to be concerned about, I think.
Certainly, I think it's a very serious election. People say it's a bit of a cliche to say that this is the most important election of the century or of whenever. But this time maybe it could be. Who knows? Because of course, if Clinton gets in, there is a potential that obviously she's a bit of known for being a bit of a warmonger. Who knows? Maybe she'll pick a fight with Putin, and we could have a nuclear war. That's something we definitely don't want to see, and I don't.
In fact, in the emails, sorry to jump in. The emails have shown that her own staff think of her as being responsible for Benghazi and for the situation in Libya in general, and for a lot of what's been going on in the Middle East in the first portion of Obama's presidency. A lot of that can be down to Clinton's sort of trying to fix a broken porcelain with a hammer type foreign policy. A lot of her foreign policy has been responsible for the situation that we see presently, including arming, whether directly or indirectly, ISIS, and allowing countries to pay her off to be taken off terror watch lists, and the permutations of the behaviors that result from those sorts of malfeasance. But anyway, carry on.
I think we've said pretty much all we wanted to say on that particular subject, but I was thinking, should we just move on then?
Yep, and I think the last aspect of this that we were going to cover was the Twitter response and things that have been going on there, especially as I've been personally involved. As we talked about last time, you've had interesting debates, if you can call them that, on Twitter with SJWs or leftists or apologists for that end of the spectrum. I've had my own experience in the last couple of days, and it sort of ties into what we talked about with Project Veritas and the paid agitators and collusion with the media, because there has been speculation even in the primaries that Clinton had paid shills on YouTube and Twitter that come out in support of her and apologize for her and troll people who support Trump or Sanders or whatever. And with Casey Neistat coming out on YouTube last week, I believe it was, in support of Clinton, it's possible that he was paid to do so. Wouldn't surprise me at all, given the other information that's come out recently. But my personal experience was with a Twitter user who he calls himself the Zodiac. His at is at its Zodiac, and he calls himself a rapper and all sorts of other things. But in the
is he white and middle-aged?
Project Veritas hashtag, no, he's black and appears to be in his either late 20s or early 30s.
There's a contestant on the X Factor who's a white and middle-aged woman who is a rapper. She goes by the name of Honey G, and it's rather amusing for the British public, for those people who watch the X Factor, to watch her try and rap. She's actually not that bad at rapping, but I think the point is that I don't really understand the point of a rapper that's in that age group, that's of that race, of that gender. Of course, they're perfectly, they're more than welcome to do that, but I don't. It's slightly ludicrous and slightly hilarious, I've got to be honest.
It's an unusual concept, I guess.
Anyway, so you were saying?
Yeah, but coming back to the Twitter thing, this Twitter user in the Project Veritas hashtag was making some incendiary statements about James O'Keefe and Allison Mass, his associate, that is James O'Keefe's associate at Project Veritas, who was the female voice in some of these undercover videos that Project Veritas released. And so Zodiac was showing pictures of her and saying that she infiltrates on the commands of James O'Keefe to try and take down campaigns. And he was basically calling them domestic terrorists and all sorts of hyperbole and incendiary language. And usually I have the discipline to recognize a troll when I see one and just leave it alone. But in this case, I couldn't help myself. I wasn't very disciplined. And so I tweeted back at this claim, "You mean exposes the truth of Dem corruption?" And a lot of sort of laughter indication afterwards. And then he said, "Dem shit talking maybe, but if you think the Republicans are squeaky clean, I got a bridge to sell you." And I responded, "Speaking of bridges being sold, did Fovel Kramer pay you, or are you that foolish?" And I also hasten to mention that even though Twitter's comment system is very disorganized, I said somewhere in here that I don't believe for a second that the Republicans are squeaky clean. I think both major parties have a lot of answering to do to the American public, and a lot of reforms need to be made. In particular, I think more third parties need to be supported by the citizens to sort of put natural free market of idea pressure on the big two parties to sort of reform, to see that they're on the decline if they don't shape up. And as a sort of aside, one of our founding fathers, George Washington, said himself that political parties are a bad idea because they're a road to political oligopoly, which is exactly what's happened. He was a prophet. And so I think that if we can't eliminate political parties, at the very least we should have as many with a legitimate shot at power to offset the problem of this this polarization that we're seeing, that's been played that we've been played against each other in the interest of corruption under the surface, probably in both parties, but we definitely have proof of the Democrats doing it right now. We don't have proof of the Republicans doing it, at least not in the recent Obama era.
Well,
you wanted to say something?
I don't I don't really sympathise with the Republicans a lot. I think even in the primaries I was rooting for Trump, although now I do think that maybe there would have been one or two other candidates that would have been okay, but I think Trump was kind of the only one that was really ever going to do something about the state of his own party as well as that of the Democrats, hopefully. Yes, I think that many people on in the alternative either don't really side with the Republicans, but we've just been left with the Republicans as the driving force to get Trump elected. But at the end of the day, I think anything would be better than Clinton. So even the Republicans who have in more recent times become even more liberal, more and more liberal, and they're falling out of touch with liberals. But to be quite honest, they're not as insanely liberal as the Democrats, which is, I guess, why they are at the moment probably the best alternative, and really the only alternative, and the one I think you should go for personally. Obviously, it's a bit. I mean, none of the viewers really should take my word for whoever they want to vote for. They can vote for, as I'm just a silly old man on the internet. But at the end of the day, I really do think that you should vote Trump, because in the future, if Clinton gets in, then you may not be able to solve any of the problems of corruption, and you'll never be able to reform your political system. With Trump, you have a chance.
Right. And having brought that up in terms of the candidates among the Republicans, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a Republican either. I mean, I came up in a Democrat-supporting household, but as I've sort of done my own investigation into it, I've become completely turned off from the Democrats. I'm currently registered as an independent, but I lean libertarian. I would have liked to see a better libertarian candidate than Gary Johnson. I think he's a disgrace to the party, and he might well have damaged the party's credibility going forward. Because of, we might have mentioned some time ago in another podcast, his way of dealing with immigration is very much the Democrat type of thing to do, and his brain farts being far too frequent in terms of not knowing what Aleppo is, and not knowing a lot of other important things that are key talking points or key issues in this election cycle. I think that shows poorly on libertarianism. In terms of a libertarian that I would much rather have seen run as a libertarian as opposed to a Republican, Rand Paul, or Rand Paul, or I forget. There's a father and son. I forget which one is which. I always mix up their names. But anyway, the two of them, I think the younger one isn't as good. I think the father, I would have loved to see him run as a libertarian. I have no particular sympathy for Republicans either, except for I've repeatedly seen them being slandered and mischaracterized by the Democrats and by progressives, and that is something I stand against. I'd much rather see them debate the issues rather than accuse someone of racism or sexism just because they're on the other side of the political spectrum. But coming back to this Twitter thing, as we sort of
say that really someone like Gary Johnson, who brain farts so much, I really cannot trust him. The same way that I really cannot trust Hillary Clinton. At the end of the day, this is what it's all about. It's all about trust. That you've got to be able to trust the person that you elect to run the country for you. Obviously, people, and of course the way that it's been going with Clinton, she's basically been, having chats in front of celebrities and trying to get people to basically trust her without actually knowing what she's all about. And that's why I can't vote for these people that don't care about these people, because I can't trust them. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, really. Trust. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And for those who might be saying, well, what about Trump's lack of knowledge, or how can you trust him? For me, it's about the learning curve. I think Trump has demonstrated a clear growth in how he's learned about the issues, how he's handled himself since the beginning of the primary season. And I don't think Gary Johnson has showed that same learning curve. I think Trump has clearly been doing his homework, and he's hired good campaign staffers to coach him on various situations and how to handle things. Granted, he still has a lot to learn, He's still not perfect, and I think the, he is not ideal. I'm not going to be the one to say that he's ideal, but he's what we have, and he's our best shot at reforming the system right now. So that's who I'm supporting, and I think it's a good sign that he's been learning and making the steps, the growth that he has.
Yeah.
But since our time is short, and we're coming down to the time that we have to wrap up, I'll sort of blast through the rest of this
sure.
Twitter exchange. So Zodiac replied to me talking about Fovel and Kramer, saying, "Nope, but Trump groupies seem to have an issue with one recording, but not others. Selective anger, it's interesting." And for me, my immediate reaction to this was selective anger, indeed very interesting, because this is the same guy who's trying to say that we must ignore all of the corruption that's been demonstrated to be the case when it comes to Hillary Clinton and her associates. But it's us who's ignoring other corruption that's going on. So my actual responding tweet to him was, "I don't know of any recordings besides the viral ones. If you send me others, I will look at them." So in other words, I'm trying to indicate to him that, okay, let's have an actual discussion rather than trying to emotionally stoke up the other one. So if you have information that I might find useful in making a decision, or that will prevent me from being biased, then pass it along. I might learn something. Of course, that link never showed up. He responded lately the Trump/Billy Bush recordings, the Howard Stern recordings, to talk about moral character, sexual assault, etc. Him bringing this up, I found extremely hypocritical, especially given what happens later on in the exchange. But I'll carry on, and you'll see why. I said, or the Hillary staffer who cornered women and propositioned them. This was something that was, again, revealed in the email leaks. And then he accused me of getting off message so easily. And later on, he pulls a similar thing saying, you're bad at focusing and so on. It's like, but hang on. Who drew us down this path? You are the one bringing up other incidents besides for the issues at hand. And so now you're trying to get into an anecdote battle. So when I engage you on your own anecdotes, now you tell me I'm getting off message. So very clearly this was a troll and I shouldn't have fallen for it. And I'm a bit annoyed at myself for having fallen for it. But if this guy was actually being genuine, it just shows the lack of awareness that Hillary supporters have. And I mean, you have to be, as the emails themselves said, Hillary staffers were laughing at the American public, calling them unaware and uninformed and ignorant and easily misled. And those are actual direct, you can find those words in the emails pertaining to the citizenry. So I mean, the fact that Hillary and her people are saying this about voters tells you the sort of person who actually has to be voting for Hillary, given what we know about her now. Carrying on, I said, you're not very good at following threads of logic. If a Clinton staffer corners women, it is still wrong, even if he is with Clinton. And then he comes in and says, you're easily distracted. If Bill Clinton is a factor, then is Melania Trump, Ivanka, Don Jr., Barron. And I said, Trump's opponents seem to think so. Easily distracted or better at context. I pity your ignorance. And then from there, obviously, it became a flame war. He brings up focus on the candidates instead, despite the fact that he was the one who drew it off the candidates. And then I said, "There's nothing to be gained by continuing this conversation. You have demonstrated that you've demonstrated that very clearly." And it just spiraled into a flame war. But I'll leave this subject off with my favorite exit from the flame war, which, let me see if I can find it. I said I wouldn't expect a cognitive abortion machine like you to be able to follow grown-up talk.
Very good.
Yeah, but that was that. Pretty unproductive, not constructive at all, but a bit of Twitter banter
Yes,
for
sure.
entertainment value, I guess.
Okay, so we're pretty much going to wrap this up now, but I guess before we go, I'd like to do one more thing. So recently, in fact, very recently, in fact, today, I had a baguette stuck on my. Hang on, let me start again. So today, I had a baguette. Is it? No, fucking can't say it. Yeah, baguette. Right. So today
Baguette?
I had a baguette stuck on my arse. Oh, hang on. No, hang on. Hang on. Fuck. No. All right. So, yeah. So you could say today I had a baguette lodged up my butthole. You could say it was a right pain in the arse. No.
Oh dear,
of course.
that's not going well
did you
at
get
all.
that? In the pain. Is
I did get the
half
joke,
spelled
yes.
in French, meaning literally bread. So. Yes. I don't.
Yes.
No.
Well, it wouldn't be the stupid
So,
show without stupid jokes,
that
would it?
will be all for tonight. Next week, well, who knows? Maybe we'll talk about something else. Maybe we'll probably talk about. Oh yes, of course, we're going to review the US Grand Prix, which is on this weekend, and we'll give our thoughts on that, and possibly whatever comes up next week. So, I've been BlueAxeRacer, and that's the end of the show. Good
And I'm
night,
Philosopher
everyone.
King.
Bye.
See ya.
And that's the end of the recording. Great. Yep.